Tanse, good afternoon. I'm Krisanach Gate. Welcome to APTN National News. Over the weekend, Crown-Indigenous Relations Minister Gary Anandasangri was on Manitoulin Island in Ontario, apologizing on behalf of Canada to a group of First Nations for the mismanagement of their money more than a century ago. Minister Anandasangri gave the apology on Saturday at the On Deck Omni Caning First Nation on Manitoulin Island. In 1862, the Crown said they would sell land belonging to the First Nations and the money would go to them. Instead, the money from the sale was used to build roads and open up Manitoulin Island for settlement. Anandasangri said, quote, "The Crown failed to act honorably and uphold its relationship with the First Nations and went against the spirit and intent of the treaties. The federal government will now pay $447.9 million in compensation to be shared among 5 First Nations on the island. The compensation was approved by 98% of affected band members earlier this year." A Montreal-based shelter for Indigenous women is hosting a tribunal in 2026. The goal is to demand accountability for the alleged crimes committed in Canada's residential school system. From now until then, the Native Women's Shelter, with the support from Amnesty International, will be collecting testimonies and evidence. Here's APTN's Savannah Craig with the story.
Reconciliation must also be understood as a nonpartisan responsibility and a great national opportunity.
9 years ago, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's final report was released with its 94 calls to action. At that time, this residential school survivor was hopeful real change would happen.
I'm really happy to see that Justin Trudeau is supporting, rather than what happened in the past. I think this is a very positive for Canada. I think it's a positive move, and especially for our people, to be acknowledged for that past that they lived in.
But according to the executive director of the Native Women's Shelter of Montreal, nothing has happened since 2015.
When the TRCs were done, it was Canada that, paid for it, that funded it, that did everything, and then the report came and it just sat.
Therefore, Naguset is spearheading a permanent People's Tribunal that will take place in Montreal in 2026. With the support of Amnesty International Canada, it will seek accountability for the Canadian government's role in the residential school system.
The difference between reconciliation and accountability is reconciliation is words on a piece of paper. Accountability is actually implementing them. And I'm all about implementation. A chimuin is Cree for, truth-telling, telling your story. And this is what we are doing. And we're going to do it one more time.
The shelter will be seeking testimonies and evidence from survivors and family members of survivors who were in the residential school system. Amnesty International is helping Naguset because it wants to see accountability and justice as well. One of its campaigners insists the tribunal will be Indigenous-led.
We hope that people will be interested and that it will open doors to change the kind of history we know about in Quebec, Canada, on Indigenous people. And we want it to be kind of a solution. We want, give some tools for people.
The National Centre for Truth and Reconciliation would not comment on the specifics of the shelter holding this tribunal, but said they welcome all efforts to focus attention on the history of residential schools and to hold Canada accountable. The tribunal is not just Montreal-based, but it will hear testimonies from all across Canada. It will be live streamed for everyone in 2026.
There is going to be a scrutiny that through all these other, calls to justice or TRCs, that it'll be a different kind of pressure on them, and they will know that the whole world is watching.
Those looking to contribute testimonies, evidence, or submit donations can visit achimuin.info for more information. Savannah Craig, APTN National News, Montreal.
A concerned citizen is hoping something can be done about what he calls offensive signs on the lawn of a home in Winnipeg. One of the signs claims, quote, "The orange shirt movement is a terrorist entity." As our reporter Sav Jones found out, it's possible that nothing can be done about the signs for now.
These signs in the yard of a suburban Winnipeg home have some people wondering where the line between free speech ends and hate speech begins. Located in a family-centric neighborhood next to a playground, the signs read, "I do not support reconciliation or the infantilization of Indian people." The Orange Shirt movement is a terrorist entity that burns churches, tears down statues, and hides behind murdered kid lies, as well as, "I do not support the gay agenda or the sexualization of kids and school libraries."
I was taken back. And kind of upset, like, wow, this is still happening.
Lee Gott says his son sent him a picture of the signs last week while in the area. Concerned, he shared it with APTN News and friends, wondering if the statements constitute a hate crime.
I sent it on Messenger to my friends, and the outcome was the words they were using is WTF, and oh, it's still going on. It's still happening, and naive people, they don't know, or they thinking it's denialism.
Gott is a day school survivor whose relatives also attended residential school. He says an aunt and 2 uncles never returned home from what are now called genocidal institutions. He believes the signs diminish their experiences, ones riddled with abuse that left Gott with PTSD.
Like, I seen similar things happen, in similar stories in documentaries of the Jewish people, other people saying that it didn't happen, about the Holocaust. Same scenario, same feeling I got.
Residential school denialism seems to be on the rise in recent years as efforts for reconciliation between Indigenous people and governments advance. But despite Canada's own apology in 2008 for their part in creating the residential school system, publicly denying the atrocity happened is not currently an offense in the criminal code like it is for the Nazi Holocaust that saw millions of Jews murdered. An NDP MP for Winnipeg is hoping to change that with a private member's bill.
Well, currently, in the criminal code, section 319 recognizes Holocaust denialism as a hate crime. What my bill proposes to do is to amend the criminal code to also include within that section residential school denialism.
If passed, a person guilty of publicly promoting residential school denialism could be imprisoned for up to 2 years. This includes condoning, downplaying, justifying, or misrepresenting facts about the residential school system. Private conversations like table talk between friends are not included, but Gazan says it's up to the courts to determine where each case may fall.
The reason that we need the bill, there's growing extremism in this country. There's growing hate movements in this country. And so it's also received that kind of response, which speaks to the need for the bill. Survivors, families, communities have a right to be protected from hate.
In a statement to APTN News, Winnipeg Mayor Scott Gillingham said in part, "Residential schools were real and a dark part of Canada's history. Their devastating impact is still felt today. Denying or minimizing this truth only deepens the harm and slows the path to healing." The mayor's office says the signs don't violate city bylaws. APTN News reached out to the Winnipeg Police for comment, but did not hear back before airtime. We tried to ask the homeowners on 2 occasions why they posted the signs, but left twice without a response. As for Gott, he says he thinks the signs should be taken down or the family spoken to, and perhaps even invited to a powwow or other event to learn more. He shares his message of every child matters proudly.
I was ashamed of being an Indian at one time, but now today, I got long hair. Right, I'm proud of who I am, being a Anishinaabe, and I could stand up and speak.
Sav Jones, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
And that's what you're doing today?
Members of a sub-council of a First Nation in southeastern Yukon are going public with serious allegations about their chief, and they're calling for an early election. Here's Sarah Connors with that story and reaction from the chief himself.
The Dayludena Council in northern BC says it's lost confidence in Liard First Nation Chief Stephen Charlie. Liard First Nation is in southeastern Yukon near the BC-Yukon border. The Dayludena Council is a sub-council of Liard. They're on the other side of the border in Lower Post, BC. On October 21st, the Dayludena Council, as well as 2 Liard youth councillors, wrote a letter to Chief Charlie and 2 other councillors, stating, as elected council and representatives of the people in our community and nation, it is our duty to ensure that the values, interests, and well-being of our nation are upheld. Over time, it has become clear that Chief Charlie's leadership is no longer aligned with these priorities. The letter accuses Charlie of questionable hiring practices, workplace bullying, and failing to collaborate with council. The letter calls for an early election for next year as opposed to 2026. APTN also obtained a second letter signed by community members. That letter alleges Chief Charlie is dissolving the language director's position at the end of her contract next year without proper notice.
They're just allegations. Well, I don't have no reason to defend myself. I've done nothing wrong.
But Chief Charlie says there's no proof to back up the accusations made against him.
You can look at my record, and there's no mismanagement. There's just individuals that are not happy with the direction that the nation's heading in.
As for the language director, he says her contract is simply coming to an end, and he stands by his decision.
I will not change my way of leadership for no one. I will always defend the people. And I didn't get reelected for being a big bully.
Chief Charlie says the other councillors don't have the authority to hold an early election, and he's not going anywhere. Dayludena Council Deputy Chief Harlan Schilling declined to do a formal interview with APTN News. However, he says he's had concerns with Chief Charlie's leadership for years, and he can no longer stay silent. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
The godfather of artificial intelligence recently made a donation to Indigenous communities. We'll tell you why when we're back in about 3 minutes. Stick around. Welcome back. Geoffrey Hinton, a British-Canadian scientist who is also known as the godfather of AI, was recently awarded the Nobel Peace Prize or Nobel Prize for Physics. This week, he is being recognized for his generosity in helping Indigenous people. Hinton said he has donated half of his share of the Nobel Prize money he received to Water First. It's a charity that trains Indigenous communities in how to develop and provide access to safe water systems. Hinton felt compelled to make the donation because he hears land acknowledgements at many events he attends, but he admits they don't do much to stop Indigenous kids from drinking unsafe water in their communities. Both Hinton and another recipient split about $1.45 million in award money. Actor Paul Spence is our guest on an all-new episode of Face to Face tonight on APTN. Known to many as Dean Murdoch from the cult films Fubar, Spence is currently starring in the film Diener 89, an origin story that is unrelated to the Fubar universe. While it looks at Diener's beginnings, it also is a story about identity as he discovers his real father is Métis, something that mirrors what was also happening in Spence's real life. Here's a preview.
At first, there's like an identity question of like, who are you, and can you call yourself that if you never were your whole life, or you don't really have a place to stay or call your own. And so that was like the question that I wanted to ask in as part of the film, and I sort of wove that into the storyline. And I'd like to think at the very least it kind of highlights that it's not something that's just in the past, that this is a storyline that affects people that are among us today, including me and my father and like thousands and thousands of others in Canada too.
We now want to tell you about this week's web poll question. Over on our website we ask, do you think government apologies for past harms against Indigenous peoples have an impact? Your answers are yes, no, or unsure. Have your say over on our website at www.aptnnews.ca. And we're always looking for your feedback or story ideas. Here's how you can continue the conversation. If you have a story you want to share, send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories, go to aptnnews.ca. You can also find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. After the break, we have Manitoba's very own Chanel Monroe, a Métis magician from Winnipeg, who's back in studio to give us a Halloween magic demonstration. Plus, a national conference is underway in Vancouver that's bringing together those that work with children and families. APTN's Tina House joins us from the event for a preview.
We're here at the Vancouver Convention Centre at the 3rd annual Our Children, Our Way conference. Mary Teege is joining me, the chair of the society. Mary, what's happening down here today?
Well, we're having the 3-day conference with participants from all over the country. We have over 1,300 participants. Many is on the waiting list, so we're really excited to showcase best practices to help each other within this really, really difficult field.
That's amazing. So we're talking about frontline workers, other organizations, and possibly foster parents?
Yeah, we have a bit of everybody, and we also have leadership here, which is really good to hear the stories from their workers. And so I think it's a real testament to people's honoring their children by being here and really wanting to do the work to get the best for their children and families.
Over on the east, St. John's 4, Charlottetown 5. Cartwright 1, Nain -1. 3 in Saguenay, Val-d'Or 4. Peterborough 4, Toronto 10. 9 in Wawa, Sudbury 3. 4 in God's Lake, Thompson 2. Winnipeg 4, Gimli 4 as well. -2 in Estevan, -3 in Swift Current. -1 in La Ronge, Buffalo Narrows -2. 2 in Grand Prairie, High Level -4. 4 in Medicine Hat, Lethbridge 4 as well. 11 in Tofino, 10 in Penticton. 5 in Prince George, Prince Rupert 9. -4 in Watson Lake, -6 in Mayo. -12 in Yellowknife, Fort Simpson -7. -14 in Colville Lake, Inuvik -12. -1 in Baker Lake, Chesterfield 0. And 0 in Iqaluit and Igloolik -2.
Welcome back. We're joined now with Chanel Monroe, our Métis magician from Winnipeg, Manitoba. Happy to have you here again in studio. Thank you for stopping by.
Thanks so much for having me back, Creason. It's a pleasure.
So you have another magic trick for us.
Yes, I do. I brought one of my spookier pieces of magic as we are in October, my favorite season, the spooky season. This is a trick from our Haunted Halloween Magic Show that we traveled to different communities doing.
Okay.
But this is one of the spookier pieces, and it's very important, children, that you do not try this trick at home because I am a trained professional.
Yep.
So, Creason, I have in my hand right here a wrapped, double-edged, Japanese stainless steel, razor-sharp razor blades.
Yay.
Yes. And in this glass, I have 6 more stainless steel razor blades. And if you could be my very brave volunteer, Creason, you're going to help me test the sharpness of these blades. Are you game?
I'm game. Let's do it.
So what you're going to do for me is hold this magician sign taut straight across your body.
Okay.
Thank you very much. We shall take the blades and one by one test the sharpness of the blades. Blade number 1.
Bam. Okay.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Put this over here.
Blade number 2. A.
Whoa, that's like... Try that at home, kids. And that's your midday newscast for this Tuesday, October 29th. We're back again in a few hours for your evening newscast. Make sure to tune in then. From all of us at APTN News, hi, masicho, miigwech. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again next day.